Coming up on the ACSA legislative lunch break, Edgar and I will get you all of your latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE with an in-depth analysis on how it impacts you. Plus, we're talking about the May budget revision today with John Gray from School Services of California and our own Megan Baier.
The ACSA legislative lunch break starts now.
And it is just after 1 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to the ACSA legislative lunch break, along with Edgar Zazwata, ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations and our Executive Director in a matter of days. I'm Naj Ali Khan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing Communications. Welcome. We are honored to have you here with us on a Wednesday. Go ahead and jump into our chat and say hello. Let us know where you're watching from today. Edgar, how are you?
You're not frazzled. You're not going to react. You're not going to react to the music. You're just going to pretend just that we just changed it up on you here.
You know what? I figured I'd say hello to you before I just went ahead and addressed.
Well, let me start with some introductory comments.
Okay.
This, and this is maybe a little payback for the surprises you give us. So for our viewers may not know, Naj, aside from being, fantastic co-host here and leading our communication efforts here at ACSA, he's been working hard. He's been going to school, and he just completed his master's degree in strategic communications from Penn State University. And there's his portrait that he's very proud of. I know his family's very proud of that portrait as well. So we wanted to surprise Naj. He didn't know we were throwing this in, but wanted to give him a congratulations.
Thank you.
On a serious note, it's not lost on me that so much of our efforts here at ACSA, especially during the pandemic, have become much of your brainchild with the team, with Michael and Gianna and the rest of Marcom, just us really thinking how we access with our members. So we just wanted to take a moment to congratulate you, Naj, on accomplishment. And now we're going to expect you to step up your game. Now that you have this higher education, right?
That's right.
We're going to put these strategic communications to work. So
that's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to the rest of the team, thank you so much for all of that. Want to say hello. Beth Bray, Mark Campbell on here, Heather Armelino, our good friend Daniel Thigpen over at San Juan Unified here with us, Rick Romero, Marie Russell. So good to have you, Ellen Wheeler. We got a good show for you coming up today. We're going to talk about the May budget revision. John Gray from School Services of California will be here, as well as our own Megan Baier, to talk about what's happening inside the state capitol, inside the legislature right now as we move towards the May budget revision, which is supposed to come out next week. So we'll cover a couple of those. Edgar, as we move into things, let me also address this Teacher Appreciation Week.
Want to
make sure we acknowledge all of our
it's a big week,
educators.
and especially for our members. And I've been seeing posts on social media. I've been seeing just like the efforts that our members are taking to really recognize which is the backbone of our system, right? When we talk about serving kids, it all starts there with the person in the classroom. And the fact that the vast majority of our members started as teachers, right? Even as they've progressed through their careers. So yeah, it's a big one. It's a big one. And hopefully everybody is taking the time to really appreciate those folks who it hasn't been an easy job. Yeah. And our school leaders know that firsthand. And I know they have the utmost respect, admiration for their teachers that are really at the forefront of their work in their schools. And it's been great just to see those efforts. I know the official day was yesterday, May 3rd, I believe, but it's part of the larger Teacher Appreciation Week. I know your wife, we'll send a little shout out to her. I know she's been is part of this since the get-go there when you were helping. She was letting you use the space there in the back there of her school, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kudos to all of the teachers out there. She's actually teaching, obviously, right now, so she wouldn't be watching the show. But kindergarten teacher, so proud of her. Of all of the educators, I can tell you this: she would have rather been packing her bags as we get ready to head off to Pennsylvania tomorrow. She would have rather have been packing. However, last night she was doing 4 days of teacher, of planning, classroom planning, getting things all set up for her students. So a big thank you to all of the teachers.
Hey, we may just send. I was such a fan of that picture. Michael, put it up one more time, just so. I think we may actually frame this and send it off to your family.
Perfect.
So,
perfect. Well,
I will. Congratulations.
I will say this. This was, my staff is great about little pranks here and there. We've all been so good about that. And I walked into my office, and this was what was decorating my office as I walked in today. There's probably 75 of these hanging in the office. So once again, it's a great staff. It made me wonder what they actually could have been doing here at work instead of doing all of that. But hey, that's okay. You're the executive director.
I gave them direct. It was my first act there. I let them take some liberty there.
Hey, let's address a couple of news headlines, and then we'll go ahead and move into our topic today. This information effective today, updated TK through 12 COVID-19 guidelines going into effect in LA County. And I just want, Edgar, if you want to just drop in a thought on this. Students who have been exposed to COVID-19 but have not shown symptoms are required to wear masks indoors for 10 days after the exposure, beginning today, according to updated guidelines from the LA Department of Public Health. The department has also altered the definition of close contacts, which could require full indoor classrooms to mask as a result of the exposure. COVID-19 cases across the county continue to rise, in part due to a new Omicron variant. This news release that came from the Department of Public Health, the BA2 subvariant, now accounts for 88% of LA County samples as of Friday. The department has also seen small increases in outbreaks among TK through 12 schools. Edgar, I'm just going to, things are so fluid all the time when it comes to guidance and regulations. And we know that in LA Unified, the masking had taken a step back. But now in LA County, we're hearing that, according to this, now there are some new guidelines out there. It just kind of adds flavor to the changing times as we go, even at this point in this pandemic.
I have to imagine that a lot of our members at this point are like, well, we've seen this story before. We've seen this movie before. And it's just, how many times have we thought we're behind it, right? Only to have the rules change. And I think that what has set in, especially over the last number of months, that this whole notion of normal probably doesn't exist, that we're going to have some level of fluctuation, over the course of this endemic phase that we're getting to. I remember the analogy that the governor used at the beginning of the pandemic when talking about the mitigation efforts, that this would be a dimmer, that you kind of turn it on, turn it off, depending as the health situation fluctuates. But I think what LA County is doing is a reflection of that while we're getting this question more and more, could we see face masks come back, at least as a state mandate? I don't think we're anywhere close to that. Frankly, I think that would be a hard lift for the state on a political level. What I can see, and what we've learned through the pandemic, is that counties, especially when it comes to these health mitigation efforts, that's where the real authority is, that the county health officer, as like we're seeing here, can impose rules that are stricter than the state.
Let me go ahead and throw this one out there as well. This is a commentary that was in EdSource from Cassandra Henderson, who, if I remember correctly, give me a moment here, former public school teacher and administrator in the Sacramento area, currently works as an education consultant for California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. She was discussing how we address the teacher shortage and really empowering the legislature to meet some thresholds for making decisions on how we go ahead and bring more teachers in. And I'm interested, for those of you who are on the chat today watching, interested to hear some of your feedback on what her suggestions are. But Edgar, let me just go ahead and throw some of these suggestions out there. Longevity bonuses for veteran teachers beginning in the 6th year of service and graduating to a minimum of $1,500 per year. Signing bonuses for all teachers who receive the lowest pay on the district salary schedules, automatic loan forgiveness with 20% of the debt forgiven each year and 100% forgiven by the end of the 5th year of service, daily substitute pay rate for all soon-to-be teachers in the student teaching phase, all tuition, credential costs, and initial licensure assessment costs paid by the state, and mentor programs for middle high school and undergraduate students who want to become teachers, allowing them to learn pedagogy principles in an authentic setting while working with others, and stipends for veteran mentors. As we are working through this budget process, this will probably be something that, based on time, we might hit up Megan and John about this, but just some of these suggestions. It's going to be interesting as we move through this process and into the next few years, how the legislature steps into to support this teacher shortage issue.
Yeah, like you said, Naj, I think what we saw from the commentary is a reflection of a bigger conversation that, frankly, we're going to be having here at ACSA, and our members will be a very big part of this. And this will be something that we'll definitely devote some programming time to. That we need to not fall into some of the trap that's happened over the pandemic, thinking that some of these issues are COVID related. They are. We know every industry is facing some level of human resources, human capital issues. The reality when it comes to schools is that we were already seeing this shortage of not only teachers, but I will point out teachers, classified employees. Obviously, what we're concerned about too is school leaders, from site administrators all the way up until superintendents. This is something we all need to be concerned about. And I think what we're seeing here, I would echo some of that call to the policymakers and to the legislature that we need to think about this from a systemic standpoint. And some of the remedies that we've seen in terms of emergency actions, that helps in the short term. But if we're going to really help with some of the pipeline issues, we do need to get creative along the lines of some of the suggestions that were thrown out.
Angela, Lucy, Scott Borba, I see your questions in there. We'll go ahead and address those at the tail end of our show, because we want to give you a couple of other things before we move to our topic. Broadcast schedule. We like to make sure you are up to date on our broadcast schedule. Edgar and I will be traveling next Wednesday during the show, so we will not be on the air for our regularly scheduled show at 1 p.m. here on Wednesday. However, as we shift to the May revision, Edgar and I will be live with a special edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. You probably expect that around 1 p.m. either Thursday or Friday. We'll see when the governor decides to push that revision out there. We assume Thursday, but we, of course, will wait and see. Edgar, let's go ahead and let's bring our guests in so we can start talking about this May revision. John Gray is the president and CEO of School Services of California, and Megan Baier is an ACSA legislative advocate. John and Megan, it is great to have you both on the show. Thank you for bringing your expertise to us. Megan, I want to start with you. Let's talk about the proposals for the budget on the Senate side and the Assembly side, and what are some of the differences that we are seeing, and how will that impact public education?
Yeah, thanks, Naj. So, we're still waiting a lot of details, but both houses are starting to give us some indication of where their priorities are and where they think that the governor should be spending money. So for the Assembly, they are proposing through legislation, AB 1948, a 15% increase to LCFF base rates. That would be inclusive of the COLA, is my understanding. They're also proposing to increase the poverty threshold. So right now, for unduplicated pupils to count as low income, we're using federal poverty thresholds. Anybody that lives in California knows our cost of living is way higher. And so Assemblymember Ting, the author of the bill and also the Assembly Budget Chair, is proposing to raise that threshold to be more in line with California income, about to the Cal Grant, our student financial aid for higher education. He's raising to those levels. So that's a really interesting proposal. We're looking for more details, but we're very happy to see the specific focus on LCFF base. In the Senate, they just released their budget blueprint, and it's very similar, but they're proposing a $10 billion investment over 3 years into the LCFF base. This year, putting additional $5 billion on top of COLA into the base. They're also proposing to use one-time monies that the state has. They're proposing to put those out on a formula basis and make them very broad, able to use very broadly for discretionary purposes, which when it comes to one-time money, those are things that we've been advocating for, both the formula and giving discretion. So we're pretty excited to see the direction and just waiting for a little bit more detail.
My friend John Gray, first of all, Thank you for joining us. Naj and our Ledge Lunch Break historians tell us that this is your first time here. So I don't know what took you so long, or maybe it was on or maybe Leilani told me not to invite you. I didn't know.
That was probably it.
You have to take that up with your team there. But in all seriousness, I wanted to thank you. So much of the work that we do is in partnership with so many of the other great organizations that we have here, really trying to make sense of the budget, education policy, and you guys are right at the forefront of that. People really take what you say as gospel, and I think that's for good reason, right? Because you've been steering them in the right direction. So just thank you for you and your team and all the important work you guys do. I'll throw out the first question, and then you could go whatever direction you want to go with this. But as we look at, I know your team is preparing. You have a big week ahead as soon as the budget gets put out. What are the things that you guys are looking at? What are the pieces that you're trying to decipher, or as you've been hearing from the field, as you did your January workshops, kind of the bigger questions? What are the pressure points that you're anticipating as we move into a budget release?
Well, thanks for that kind introduction, Edgar, and congratulations on the executive director position, and congratulations, Naj. You need to do something about their football helmets. They have the worst in the institution.
No, John, don't make me punt you right off of this show.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and looking at that picture of me from like 20 years ago makes me really feel bad right now, looking at my image on this call. So thanks for the question, Edgar. As we sit here, we kind of go back to where we were before January, and looked at the structural problems in school district funding and budgets, and what a terrible place we were before January came out. So when the numbers got better, we were following. When the COLAs got bigger, we were very relieved. But remember, we're comparing us against where we were before January, when things looked awful. We had the funding cliff. So the good news is things are a lot better based on the January's proposal. But as we're looking at the numbers coming in, we're 29 billion above just from January to April on tax receipts. About 40% of that is Prop 98, so another 11.5 billion. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for our legislators to either help us get through the long term, or are we just going to, create more categorical programs? So what we're looking at and what we're hoping for and what we're hearing, we like the idea of putting more money to the base. There'll be plenty of money if they want to do that. One of the proposals is for like a 15% COLA. Believe it or not, there's enough money to do that. And so what do they do with all this new money, right? And so one of the things that we watch closely is how much are they going to count as one-time versus ongoing. Now, we know the settle up, that's going to be one-time funding. And as Megan said, we're watching that too. We think there's going to be some one-time funding, ideally, pretty much unrestricted. You'll likely see that they'll have a lot of ideas for us. Okay, this is for the pension issue. This is for declining enrollment, whatever it is. But some one-time money that didn't have strings attached would be very good, and that's what we're hearing. The big question will be, how much of it are they going to count as ongoing in the 22-23 budget? And so as we watch that COLA tick up, you might have seen the COLA is going to be 6.56%. But with all the declining enrollment, districts aren't going to get 6.56% above and beyond what they got the prior year when they have significant declining enrollment. So the fact that there is a declining enrollment proposal, and we like the governors, it's going to help districts out significantly, mainly because you have the 2 hold harmless years. But after that, declining enrollment's still going to be a problem. You're going to be sliding down. You're not going to be able to reduce expenditures as fast as you're losing revenues. So we're hoping for, like you said, Edgar, maybe some systemic changes. There's an opportunity as a state. We're declining. Technically speaking, if we keep losing ADA and we're in test 1 and we get a percentage of the budget, we might grow ourselves into the national average on per ADA funding just by the fact that we're declining. So we're watching closely to make sure that there's a recognition out there that districts are hurting with the declining enrollment and the demands for those new dollars. So the 6.56% COLA, it sounds really good because it's been so much higher than we had in the past. There's a reason it's 6.56. The cost of business is going up. So what we're watching and what we're listening to, we don't want a bunch of new categorical programs, and there's some various things out there. But this is a good opportunity for the legislators and the governor to step up and maybe do a long-term fix. There's enough money in it, I think, that they can actually do something about it. And that's what we're hoping. That's the tact that we're hoping that they will take.
And want to remind all of you, if you have questions, go ahead and put those into our chat. We're loading up on those questions right now, so go ahead and do that. And Megan apparently is multitasking because Jeff Oakes asked the question. I'm getting to it. Was in negotiations today. Someone mentioned COLA was projected at 6.56%. Is that correct? And Megan, you said yes. So we appreciate that you're multitasking while this is all going on. Let me ask you, if you just want to put your ACSA member hat on, what is ACSA continuing to push as far as this budget is concerned to support what our members need?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, I think, our priorities have stayed consistent, and despite the things that we've seen over the last year, they're pretty consistent. So, we want to see a significant increase to base funding. We know that this is long overdue. We haven't seen an increase to LCFF beyond COLA since 2018. We want to see COVID attendance relief. We know that districts across the state have had very volatile attendance, especially in January with the different surges that have hit over the last year. We also, coupled with that, we also are advocating for loosening the restrictions on independent study. I think someone in the comments asked, we haven't seen changes yet. ACSA, along with other educational partners, has been actively lobbying on this. We're hopeful that we're going to get the legislature to push some proposals, or maybe even see a little bit of progress in the governor's May revise. And then finally, I think another really big item that I'd hit on as a big priority for us is pension relief. We have rates scheduled to increase to employers. So that's if we don't see pension relief from the state, that's going to eat into whatever sort of increase we get. So those are our main priorities.
Hey, Nash, just talk before I get the next question to John. One of my favorite parts of my job is an old or new job.
Wait a minute, which job?
I'm kind of doing both for the next couple of weeks, so we'll do. No, I still got Mark Ecker here. I'm counting down the days, about 3 weeks. So let's go with my current still director of government relations job. I say this not just because she's on the screen. We have best team in Sacramento, and Megan was describing what's happening. Has been at the forefront of all of these conversations. The attendance relief, independent study. It's not just us giving out information, but really taking the input that we get on this show, that we get in our other venues, and then really trying to make a difference in the policy process. So just kudos to Megan and all the work that she's doing across the state in the Capitol. John, so one of the things I know you also, aside from making sense of the budget and giving information, you folks do a lot of work on the negotiations front. Given what you said in your last answer about the expected influx in resources, but some of the questions of how much might be one time, how much may be ongoing, what do you think? What are you looking out for, especially on the negotiations front? Maybe give us a quick, what's the landscape look like, and what do you think will happen moving forward, given what we might anticipate in this budget?
Okay, good question. We think the landscape is getting a lot tougher, just to be candid. And I talk a lot to the labor attorneys, all the different law firms that sit at tables across the state. They are seeing the same thing. I've been doing this a long time and have a lot of positive relationships with the labor people. And I'm not recognizing some of them. Some of them in the past would come in and try to problem solve, and I'm seeing a new hat on them. They're taking a much different approach. I think there's a recognition by labor that they're smart and they've been around a long time and they know how cyclical everything is going. I mean, if you're reading the national news, if you're looking at the gross domestic product, if you're looking at inflation, they just hiked interest rates by 0.5 point today. Our economy is in an interesting place. And as we all know, when recessions hit the federal government, they hit the state government, they hit California schools. We have a long record of showing that, when things get tough at the state with the state budget, we are not exempt from any solutions to bring expenditures down within revenues. And so I think there's a recognition that this is going to be a big year. And so I'm seeing a lot of multi-year proposals where they're trying to lock down hard percentages. I see 6, 6, and 6, 5, 5, and 5, 7, 7, and 7. It's all over the place. And one of my staff said, if we get a 15% COLA, what do you think the demands will be? I said, 16%, right? You can expect those demands to go up. During the gap closure time during LCFF, no one really wanted to talk about COLA on the other side of the table, but they sure do now. And so one of the reasons for the push is, yes, they think it's going to be a big year. Yes, they think there might be some significant ongoing money coming in. And, so let's push. And they recognize that hard coding percentages in those out years is probably the best way to go right now. So if things bottom out, they're protected. I'm also seeing proposals to add staff like psychs and mental health professionals and counselors, things like that. And so the proposals are rather large, and so I think that it's in the anticipation of all this money coming down the pike. And so it's very tough on districts. I'm seeing districts with long-term positive relationships where those have kind of crumbled. So if you're out there and you have a good positive relationship with your bargaining units, you need to continue to work on that and make sure it stays positive. So I think you're going to see a significant push. We're now scheduled for fact findings week after week. During the pandemic, they completely stopped. And so I think, and here's the other reason. Yes, they think there's going to be a lot of money coming down the pike, but all the data points that they're going to communicate to your community are simple and easy and compelling. Think about it. You're probably all sitting on the biggest fund balance you've ever had. I'm just guessing, right? I look at the statewide numbers, I go into individual districts, and you're sitting on a giant fund balance, most of you. And, it's amazing what happens when you close schools. You don't spend as much money, right? And so there's a lot of one-time money sitting into those fund balances. And, your stakeholders don't necessarily get that. So they have a data point. Look at that fund balance. The other data point they have is, look, when you did the first interim, you were projecting, doomsday. Now it's so much better with maybe the ADA averaging a much higher COLA. So things are a lot better. And there is an awareness all over in our communities that inflation, the cost of doing business is going up. Our stakeholders are going to the grocery store, seeing how much things cost. So they have a compelling argument that why won't you give us COLA? Inflation's going up 7.5%. You get a 5.5 or 6.56 COLA. It seems fair. So I think the push is, yes, they recognize how cyclical things are. They recognize that this is likely to be a pretty significant big year. And they have the data points to communicate to your stakeholders. And so do you have counterpoints to all those data points? You absolutely do. But think about that counterpoint. Is where they have just one sentence, you have 2 paragraphs explaining, yeah, that's true, but let me go into some detail on why that doesn't apply, right? They have a much simpler message. So communications, I think, are going to be a big issue when the May revise comes out, because I'm guessing you're going to hear historic highs, more money than ever, right? Yeah. And you need to translate that. And depending on what comes down the pike, that translation is going to be very important.
So good communications advice, John.
Yeah. We're rounding the bottom of the hour, but we're going to go ahead and stay on because we've had.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I go too long?
No. That's fine. We got
That was a
Sorry,
subtle way
Megan.
of saying your answer was too long, John. No,
Okay.
I think this is one we're giving the participation. I'm with you, Naj. Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going. And John, we're going to go ahead and put you back on the spot here. Stephen Hovey asked, wouldn't it be prudent long-term fiscal policy to use lots of one-time revenue to retire debt early? Doesn't that get around the GAN limit? Of course, not politically sexy. Can you just add anything into that, John?
Sure. And I'm not. So you're talking about the GAN limit locally, or are you talking about the state spending limit? I guess I would ask. And so the answer to your question is yes. And even if you're in a school district using one-time money to retire an ongoing expense, that always makes sense. But at the state level, they are going to have a spending problem, and it's going to be on the non-Prop 98 side. I think they have 2 years to deal with that. That is a hot topic at the state level. But if you're talking about your question, as I'm seeing it, yeah, it is not politically sexy, but it obviously makes sense.
Megan, you could probably take the next question. We got a couple of comments and questions from, I think it was Marissa and Jeremy about independent study. Jeremy asked a dangerous question that I always, have to think twice when they said, "Does the legislature really understand?" Well, I'll leave that at that, there. But maybe you can talk about what do we think, what do we foresee in terms of potential changes on IS? And to Jeremy's point, is there a better understanding of the challenges that really faced our schools with the requirements from last year?
A little bit of a dangerous.
We can hear you.
Okay. I am going to try to answer the little bit of the dangerous question and say, I think last year when this new independent study model was created, the legislature did not understand how burdensome the paperwork was going to be and how difficult to navigate it was going to be. And I also don't think that they expected there to be additional surges. Remember, it was created right after the vaccines were rolling out. We were all excited that the pandemic was over, and here we are. So since that time, there's been a massive amount of advocacy. ACSA has been, this is one of our top issues, from every level of our membership that we've been working on. This was a priority issue during our legislative action day, and ACSA regions all over the state were meeting with legislators, talking to them about the practical realities. Legislators aren't in school, so they don't necessarily, they don't understand what it means to have to get these contracts signed beforehand and why that can be so problematic among many of the other issues. So I think, the long and short of it is they didn't understand it. I think there's a lot greater understanding now. We saw some softening from the governor in his January proposal. He proposed some modest changes. We're hoping that the legislature is going to go much further with their proposals, but we're still waiting to see.
John, I'll ask this, and Megan could chime in too. We've gotten a couple questions about TK facilities. We've got a question about adult ed. Given the opportunity that you talked about, I mean, what do we foresee, given kind of some of the historical trends that we've seen on some of these other programs? What are you folks looking out for in those specific programs?
Well, adult ed's not on my radar at all. So I will punt to the expert, Megan. But on UTK, those are the challenges. We just did a webinar yesterday on that topic. We partnered with Early Edge. And, I think that's probably full speed ahead. And, there's going to be money to make that go easier. But it's interesting. I'm finding that there's a lack of awareness in a lot of school districts that haven't even really done the planning stages, and school starts really quick next year. And so I think that that's going to be a tough area, adding another grade. It's going to help out, obviously, with the ADA, but I expect a continued push on that. Megan,
anything you would add either on those programs or anything else you saw in the chat?
Sure. I think adult ed is supposed to be getting a COLA. So hopefully we'll see them get the benefit of the, new we'll see what's in the May revision on that. And I'm not sure if there's any other unanswered questions you wanted me to hit, Edgar.
I think you covered it. I think we want to make sure to hit that adult ed piece.
Yeah. All right. John Gray, President and CEO, School Services of California. Megan Baird, ACSA Legislative Advocate. Before we say goodbye to you guys, here comes my Cal Worthington promo. School Services webinar on the May revision, May 20th. John, what time does that start?
It starts at 9 a.m. and I'll bring my dog Spot.
There you go. Perfect. sscal.com for more information and to register. John and Megan, great to have you guys. Have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you.
Edgar, let me just ask, because there were two questions that came in and I want to just make sure I address those. Scott Borba asked the question, do any high school districts have education as a CTE pathway? Folks, if any of you could respond to Scott, he might just be simply asking if any of the viewers have that experience. Go ahead and jump into the chat and let him know. Lucy asked this question, Edgar, and just a quick update. Any update on the required testing for non-vaccinated staff members? Any update to that?
Yeah, we almost got through the week. Nobody asked me the question, so I should have almost just threw that out right off the bat. So it's been a couple weeks since we said this, so I think it's worth repeating that the last time we asked the governor's office about this, they said don't anticipate any changes for the remainder of the school year, but they did say that those pieces about vaccinating employees, the requirement to vaccinate or test was under consideration. And at that time, that was a couple weeks ago, and they told us that they would have the guidelines and the rules for the new school year within weeks. You know, we've heard weeks before in quotation. So I would assume we're going to hear something soon on whether those rules will change. So stay tuned on that.
Okay. Scott, we've got Mike McCormick, the great superintendent over at Valverde Unified School District. He has chimed in 44 CTE pathways in Valverde. By the way, I have toured some of those CTE pathways over there in Valverde. My goodness, it's incredible what Mike and his team are doing over there. And Beth Bray also chimes in over at ABC Unified. Our good friend Scott Smith over at ABC Unified has a teacher track with a community college. So that information for you there. Folks, as we mentioned, we will not be on the air next Wednesday, but we will be on the air likely Thursday with a special edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. To find out when we are coming on live, go ahead and subscribe to us here on YouTube. If you like what you see and you want alerts when we're going to come on the air, go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube. We're over 2,500 subscribers now. Or like us on Facebook. You'll get those updates when Edgar and I are going to be coming on. I have no idea where that third camera just came in from.
We don't slip up very often, but you know, Michael must have not seen that. One thing, Naj, I'm going to point out, I'm going to, you know, it's been funny as I've been trying to make I'm going to try not to get distracted. I'll make this quick. Been making the rounds around the state, you know, preparing for my new role. And you'd be surprised how many times I get the question, what's going to happen to the lunch break?
I know.
Are you going to continue to do the lunch break? So I'll say it today. We'll say it again. The plan is to keep this thing going. You know, there may be weeks where we'll have to play around with the schedule. We've thrown out the idea, maybe some guest hosts here, whether it be our team or maybe even some of our members. But no, we appreciate how often people thank us for us just even doing this half hour a week. Sometimes goes a little bit more than half hour. But the goal is definitely to keep this going, even with some of the changes we have here at ACSA.
Can I just say this? Since you just said possibly some of our members, do you and I want to guess who will probably be the first one to jump in and say they want to volunteer?
I'm not going to make any predictions. I mean, I think we have a bench there. So
we do. Yes. Okay. All right. See, I'm going to tell you right now, I figured Neri Pais was going to be the first one to volunteer. And I think that's him volunteering.
Mike McCormick's in. I know he's pretty sophisticated with some of his communication efforts. So.
He absolutely is. Absolutely is. All right, folks. Again, not on Wednesday, but likely on Thursday. We hope you join us. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the week. We will see you next week here, live and interactive on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break.